Welcome back to the show. I am so excited for my conversation today with Andrew. So, Andrew, would love to have you start off by telling us who you are and what you do in the events industry.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Andrew Roby. I am an event producer and designer. I do mostly corporate events, nonprofits, and some brand work. I'm based in DC, but we tend to fly everywhere. And I love what I do. I've been in the business now for 21 years, so it's been a journey. I will say that.
Yeah, you have experienced a lot in 21 years in the industry.
Absolutely. It's some of everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Never a
yeah.
dull season.
I know. I was talking about this recently with someone about like the event planners that are coming out of school now, like
Mhm.
weren't even they were like in high school when COVID happened, right? Like
Yeah.
they're not even they didn't even experience the industry, like which to me was the biggest change that happened in the industry. Like, yeah, there had been a recession, like other things, but that was the biggest like
Oh, yeah.
upset in the industry, right? And I think it's like crazy that we're now gonna be dealing with planners that just have no concept of like the before times, right?
Yes, I agree.
For better or worse, right? Like I wonder, like
Which is,
in
I
some
mean,
ways,
it's a good and bad thing, I think. I don't think any one of us wanted to go through the pandemic
of course,
at all. So I think that that is a benefit for them that, many didn't have to navigate that. But at the same time, I think most of us have built our level of expertise off of risk, off of the unknowns, off of pandemic moments, through our careers that have shaped us to be who we are today. So I think our industry needs more of that grit from, event professionals who have seen some things in life. So
yeah,
yeah, I definitely agree.
yeah, and it's funny, like not even about the pandemic, but like I'll have clients or other stakeholders come to me and be like, "You're so calm, like something is like going not well,"
Yeah.
and I'm so calm, and I'm like, "Yeah, because this is." I've either seen it before or I've seen something worse,
Mm.
right? And that like, you can't teach that. Like that just comes from experience. That comes from doing it so many times. That muscle memory of like, it's gonna be okay. It's
Right.
gonna be okay. We're gonna figure it out.
I agree. I definitely agree. And it's good to have that level of calm and that seasoned professional that can guide you through things when it just feels like everything is crumbling. When in actuality it's like, okay, this is for us, we're so desensitized to it that we're like, okay, this is a routine thing. Here's how to fix it. So I
Yeah,
get that.
yeah. And it's funny because I often joke like I do corporate work. I've always done corporate work. Early days I thought I wanted to do weddings and I never
Mhm.
really did it and then now can't imagine doing it. But and one of the reasons was that, weddings it's like it's everybody's like only day, right? It's
Yeah.
like their only day that they're ever going to do this. And but then I see that a lot with clients too of like they don't host events very often and they don't see these things going down that often and they're like, "Oh my god, like I live in Toronto. There's snowstorms sometimes, and someone's like, "There's a snowstorm coming." I'm like, "Yeah, it's Canada. Sometimes we have snowstorms." And here's what we're gonna do about it. Here we're gonna have some people that are gonna cancel. We're gonna have some people not show. We're gonna change the setup in the room so that it doesn't look like half the people didn't show up
Yeah.
because we know that half the people aren't gonna show up, right?
Yeah. That's very true because I think that I mean, we plan for things based off of elements outside of what's happening in the event, and that used to be the framework. Let's postpone because, to your point, the weather isn't going to be as great, or let's shift something because we're not having as many people. And I think that in today's society and how the world is going, we cannot live off of what's happening in the world and how things are affecting our event because if we continue to do that, everything will be canceled. I think that we now are in the phase where, okay, yes, we are acknowledging those things that are happening outside of the control of our event, but we still have to shift our event to continue to happen on that day because one, people need this event, people are coming to this event, people are expecting a level of excellence despite all the other things that are happening outside of our control. And I think that that is what makes events really special is that out of all the things that are happening in the world, there is something that we all can depend on, and that is some level of an event still happening, regardless if it's a large corporate event, if it's a small intimate dinner, if it's a family gathering. Those are moments that we count on to get us through life, really. Even if it's a business event, like those connections, the opportunities to network with attendees are very meaningful and allows us to get out of all the other chaos that's happening in the world to have that one special moment. And that's why we rely on events. So those events have to happen despite all the stuff that's happening in the world. So yeah.
Yeah. And I went to an event recently. I was not the planner, but I went to this event. It was a fundraiser for a hospital foundation in
Hmm.
our area, a smaller hospital, and it was a breakfast networking event. So they had a keynote and some, like different sessions, a
Hmm.
panel, and I think it was the third year they were doing this, and there was about 120 people in the room. And they said at the beginning, the first time we did this event, we had 11 people show up,
Wow.
but we saw the value in those 11 people. And
Yeah,
I think like maybe it comes from like my theater days where I had like this drama instructor who said, if one person shows up in the audience, you go out and put on the
that's
full
right.
show for that one person, because that's what matters, right? And so I think sometimes, and I have these conversations with clients of like, I know what your goal is for this event, but if you get 11 people that are interested, committed, engaged, now going to go spread your message of fundraising and all of that, that's still a win if you
Yep,
do it properly.
I
You
agree.
know, we get so, like, I think we get obsessed with the vanity metrics of how many people are in the room. And it's like,
Hmm.
yes, of course, we would love to have 120 people going out and spreading your fundraising message, but start with those 10.
Yeah,
Get those 11 really engaged. Get them so that next year they bring 3 people to the event, and now all of a sudden you're bigger, right? People want that like instant gratification in everything, and events don't always work like that.
no, they don't. But when you look at, when we do with events, I try to look at behavior a lot within the event ecosystem, because I think behavior really does give us a lot of insight into how to create events. And you mentioned like we are a microwave society, and I agree with that. Like you just look at social media and how much people are trying to get a certain amount of likes, a certain amount of comments, a certain amount of, engagements on a particular post. That translates very well into how people see events and how, we say if it's not a 5,000 person event, the event is not successful. But what is the level of success? What are the matrix that says the KPIs have been met? And that is outside of guest count, and so 11
Yeah.
people can be promoters to your organization and spread the word about that event that grows them to, having thousands of people come however many years later. But I think that the more we look at the KPIs and what really shapes an event and the behavior that comes out of that moves people from where they were to where they need to be, the more in line we are to making sure that events are products of success and avenues of allowing greatness to happen in the attendees that actually are there.
Yeah, it's so true. Like we need to design them with those KPIs in mind and be really honest about what those KPIs are. Like I think that if your KPIs or your goals of the event are just how many people you have in the room, like you've already like lost the plot,
Absolutely.
right? Like what is it that you're trying to do? Like are you trying to sell them more? Are you trying to fundraise a certain amount? Are you trying to retain them as a customer?
Yeah.
Are you trying to engage them as an employee? Like what is it? Like yes, of course you need to know how many people you're going to have and you need to forecast and have
Hmm.
all of those good metrics, but that shouldn't be the baseline for your event. Your baseline should be like, what is your business objective?
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. And I know, like, so we've been connected on LinkedIn for some time and you're very active on there, great content. And I know you talk a lot about the greater ecosystem. So, yes, what attendees expect from organizers, but what also organizers are expecting from venues. And I think, we kind of talked about at the beginning the changes we've seen in the last 6 years and what I've seen in the last 15 and what you've seen in the last 20, that it's just different. Like when people, and there are still people that hosted an annual event, prior to 2020 that have not brought that event back and are just bringing it back now, which to some people sounds crazy. But there are some people who are like, oh, we haven't run this conference in since 2020 because it ran every 3 years. We skipped 2023 because of we didn't want to sign a contract in 2020,
Right.
and then now we're just coming back, right? So what are you seeing in those shifts with venues as we talk about timelines getting shorter, attendees expectations getting shorter and changing over like the last few years?
Yeah, I think that has been a big shift, and LinkedIn has been one of those places where I'm actually able to see different conversations that are happening. Of course, you have the hoteler side where, those bookers of hotels are saying, hey, the RFP process is meant to be this and structured this way and be on the side of like a hotel because the sleeping rooms are really important. Planners are saying, okay, yeah, but the sleeping rooms are not why people are coming to events and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of different conversations and thought processes that can be confusing when it relates to, booking in a venue or even trying to restart an event from, years past. And I think that what's happening now is that because our world is all over the place, the less time you give yourself to be able to execute an event or to plan an event, I feel the worse off it's going to be. So the short lead times are not necessarily beneficial to anybody because you have venues that are at this point trying to reach different sales goals and are more picky about who they're going to give a contract to. And then you have clients who are saying, hey, we really want to do this event. We don't have that much lead time because leadership isn't giving us the go on budgets, which should have been done last year or whatever. But we still see the need for this event. So trying to find the middle point of that is really, it puts people in a really particular place. And so I don't necessarily have an answer or to know why these things are shifting the way that they are shifting, but I do see that it is a lot of nuances to booking venues and then trying to navigate those venues rather quickly. But I think that what I focus on now is trying to develop those partnerships, and to be really upfront on both sides with the people that are running the venues as well as my clients, because I think people just feel like, sure, I can start saying that I want to do an event today, and then by tomorrow, everything's going to be booked and everything's going to be fine. And it doesn't work that way because of the way our ecosystem is shaped. There's levels to every single thing. And with those levels is its own timeline on how to actually, book something, how to lay it out, how to execute it. And I think that we don't all talk to each other and we don't all feel like we have to talk to each other, especially from our client perspective, who's like, I'm the client. Whatever I say is what, we want to do, which is not really how it should be. So I think that it's really interesting to navigate right now in trying to deal with venues as well as client expectations.
Yeah, I think that there's a few factors at play. I think one is that because in 2020, 2021, 2022, even going into 2023, people were so nervous to
Hmm.
sign anything
Yeah.
because they had to cancel so many things. And so it just kept pushing the timelines. And then I think people got comfortable. I think people said, well, last time we had 4 months to plan it. So what's the big deal that you only have 6 months this time? Like you've done it before. And it's like, just because it's been done doesn't mean that that's the like most logical way. That doesn't mean, and even like I had a client last year or kind of going like straddled the end of 2025 into 2026 where we planned an event in like about 8 weeks. It was a smaller event, but had sleeping rooms, meeting space, was done over the like it was over the holidays, so
Yeah.
sales teams are out, people are out, and they're like, are we gonna get it done? I'm like, you're gonna have a room, you're gonna have places for your people to sleep. Are you gonna pay the best price? Probably not. I'm like, you're benefiting from the fact that it's January, so it's a slower time in Toronto. Like if you tried to do this in September or June, like I would probably have to laugh.
Yeah.
But that's kind of working in your favor. But realistically, like you're not going to get your top choices because your top choices booked out 6 months ago,
Yeah.
a year ago, even 3 months ago, right? So I think like reframing that expectation. And I think that the targets, we talked about targets already, but the targets for sales teams have changed. Like you said, like it feels like every event I bring to a venue is going to committee. It's like they gotta like then like the number of times that I've had like, oh yeah, we have the space on hold for you during a site inspection, like standing on site, and by the time I get back to my desk, it's been sold by some other sales rep. Like they're not speaking within themselves, and I'm like, but we were standing in the room. Like I literally had to get back to my desk to sign the contract, right? Like, but the pressure that is being put on the sales teams is not about the client client happiness and our happiness. It's okay, but which one is bringing in the most revenue?
That is true because and I think what everyone needs to realize is that the outside factors are really more than what we think that they are. And so, yes, what is the most assured piece of income that I'm going to get? And can I get it right now? And that is what is driving so many sales deals or so many contract signings than ever before, is because one, people are, those people who are trying to do an event and they want to get a venue, they may have been searching for a venue for however many weeks or months. If they have something, they're going to go after it because they want to lock in that price. But at the same time, that venue really wants to make sure that they're getting the best deal possible based off of who is trying to, you know, book that particular venue. It's no different from trying to buy a house. You buy a house, there's multiple people that are going to want to buy that house. So you have to, at this point, outbid and make sure that whatever you are positioning yourself to be to that seller is the best position that there is out of everybody that is trying to buy that house. And the same thing for trying to book that particular venue on that date is that you're literally pitching yourself to a venue, which to me is insane. But that's how it feels because if they don't see the value, if they don't see the upsell opportunity from a particular event, they're going to go to the one who actually gives them that. And they're trying to meet that sales quota. So I understand. It's crazy. It feels like it's cutthroat in a way, but I get it.
Yeah, I often compare it to the real estate, stand-in, especially like being in Toronto. I'm not unfamiliar with multiple bids and losing houses and signing
Yeah.
contracts again in the middle of the house trying to get it locked in. And I think, you've mentioned that's why those relationships are so important, right? Because if you're dealing with a sales team that doesn't know you, it's going to be harder, right? Whereas if the sales team knows you, knows the type of business that you bring,
Yeah.
or can at least kind of give you that insider information of like, here's what's going on, like, here's what we're up against,
Right.
instead of just like blindly sending back an RFP. And
Hmm.
it's funny because I am a classic millennial. Will avoid a phone call as much as possible, but sometimes you just like no one answers the phone anymore. Like sometimes I'm like, can you just like can we just have a conversation to talk over like what is happening in this RFP or why I haven't heard back from you or what you're talking about in this email, right? And I think like that has been such a shift too of okay, like it's all gotten very systematized and in some ways like yes that's helpful because otherwise you just have thousands of emails bouncing all over the place,
Hmm.
but also like are we taking too much of the like human and relationship element out of that process that is harming both us as planners, our clients, and the venues?
Yeah. I mean, perfectly said. I completely agree. I agree. I have no other words. The relationship aspect is really important, and I want us to be able to foster better relationships. Because again, there's things on a RFP that you cannot truly express, and to your point, getting on the phone does help that. So I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and knowing like I said, the vendor when you have those relationships with them, whether they're the venue or your AV
Hmm.
team or your swag team. Like I know that for myself, like, and I'm sure that this is true for many planners. Like I'm going to the one who makes it easy, right? Like
Yeah.
they might not be the cheapest, but I know that when I call them, they're going to get it delivered by the time that they say they're going to get it delivered. I'm not, I tried a new swag company recently because I had a promo. So honestly, I was just doing like a very simple order.
Hmm.
And it's like weeks, like we're still talking about it. I'm like, why are we still talking about this very small thing, right? Like, so I know, like, when I recommend like some of the vendors I work with, I'll tell people you could probably get it cheaper somewhere else, but I know that it's going to show up when it's supposed to be there. I know that the price is going to be the price. Like I know though, and I know that if I've had it before where I worked at a company where they ordered these hats and the logo was off center on like
Mm.
1,000 embroidered hats. That just basically all went in the garbage. And when I worked with him, he's like, when that came off the line the first time, I would have sent you a picture and said, is this how you want this to look? Because like the proof to the actual product looked different. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's what I want. Like I want that level of ease of working with a vendor of I know that something's not going to show up looking stupid because he's going to check it, or the AV team, like, yeah, they might be most expensive, but I don't need to worry about the mics going down in the middle of it, or like, nobody knowing where the AV person is because they went out on a break and never came back, right?
Very true. And I think that I think people don't want to talk about that as much as we should be talking about it though, is that the lack of excellence that
Mm.
event professionals have. And I'm not saying that that's everybody, but you have plenty of clients that are out there that are doing events by themselves that are willing and able to keep people like that employed. And that's
Yeah.
why they exist in our ecosystem. And then you also have people that are simply lazy. They can rise to that level of excellence, but they choose not to because it is an opportunity for them to cut corners and to do less work. I think the more that we build relationships with people that are going to send you a proof of a hat with a logo that is off-centered versus someone who is going to see that it's off-centered and still send it to you is something that we really need to make sure happens time and time again because our clients deserve that. Our branding, our own company, personal branding deserves that. We deserve a level of excellence where we know that despite the cost, what you're producing, the service that you're giving is exactly what is needed for that particular event. And the more that we allow, companies and agencies within the event industry to get by with subpar service or subpar products, the more we harm our industry, and we need to call that out more. We need to have those types of conversations more and be willing to critique people who do such things. And I think that the niceties of being in the event industry. I'm not a nice person when it comes to what I do. I am kind. I will make sure that how I say things to you is respectful and it is delivered in the proper way, but I'm not being nice for the sake of simply making sure that we toe the line and that I don't ruffle feathers. I'm going to ruffle some feathers if it means that the quality of service that I'm giving to my client is what they deserve. And I think we need to have those conversations more often.
Yeah, and I think it's the unfortunate result of the race to the bottom,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Someone can do it cheaper, and so they go with that. I'm sure that in your like many years as a planner, and I've had this experience of someone telling you that you're too expensive and then
Mhm.
calling you 6 months later because they went with the cheaper option, and now things are not going well, and they're bringing you in, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that fortunately, and I just saw this post on, I don't know, it was like a meme taken from like a screenshot of someone's like next door account or Facebook group or something,
Mhm.
where this person was like, I'm planning this baby shower and I want basically all of these services for free and I'll tip them afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, so you're having like a mobile bar, a DJ, a photographer, like servers, and the post that they can be high school students. I'm like, what high school students have mobile bar? I'm like, okay, and it was obviously like rage bait, but like it is this like lack of value on the hospitality services
Oh
that
yeah.
result in people being allowed to be like ineffective. And I had a conversation with another planner who I do travel management for like large groups, and she was asking me my pricing, and she's like, the client is paying so much less, and she's like, I know that it's not good, but they are not dealing with it, and so they'll never change it because they're just looking at the line item. She's like, I know why you're charging what you're charging, and you're not like, it's not wrong and it's not outrageous. It's just that they have found someone that will do it for cheaper, and even though it's not as good, they don't care. And like that is the challenge that you're up against of, well, they know the service isn't good, but they don't care because they're literally just looking at the line item.
This is true. I just had this conversation with a potential client. I decided to decline the opportunity. This was like last week, and where The company is a very large company, known within their region, extremely popular, and they were doing a lot of their events internally and wanted to move to an outside agency. But they did not want to change the budget that they were operating on. So my question back to them was, are you asking me to do this for free? Because if you're not willing to increase your budget to bring on an outside agency to plan this event, then what are you really trying to do? I mean, at this point, you're going to continue to do it internally until you allocate the proper budget for a company to come and do this event for you. Because there's no way I can execute this event giving you everything that you've had in the past with your existing budget, plus move you to where you ought to be for an event with an agency. So I was like, it would be a great opportunity, but I'm not doing this for free, and I'm not cutting my costs so that way I can give you a certain level of service that you didn't pay for. So we had to depart. I had to decline, and I was totally okay with that. I just went on with my day. But I mean, I think that that's how things happen. I guess how things are within our industry that we need to get comfortable with saying no.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, and it's when you're established, it's easier, and when you're busy, it's easier to say no and decline the opportunities that aren't aligned.
Yeah.
But I like every agency has been there of like, well, we're probably gonna have regrets.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah, and I'd rather not. Like I totally get that. And that's a very valid and fair point. Regardless of if you're, 30 years in or if this is your first year in, you always have requirements for sales, you always have bills, you always have payroll. So those decisions aren't to be taken lightly when you're making it. But for me, I think that if I'm going to make a decision, I am making a decision on a number of things. Of course, sales and revenue is part of that. But how happy am I going to be with this? How stressed are you
yeah,
about to make me and my
yeah,
team in doing this event? And if I feel like it is going to be a burden and that this is probably maybe going to be a one-off event because we're going to part ways based off of me calling out things that I know shouldn't happen and what should be done, then I'm just going to walk away from it. I rather, have them come back to me maybe a year, maybe 2 years from now and say, hey, we finally allocated, the right amount of budget to bring in an outside agency. Would you be interested? Versus me doing something and it just falls and fails, on both of our ends. And I never have a chance to really show them a great level of service that we actually have.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what is the invisible
Yeah.
cost, right, to you and your team that yes, on paper might not exist, but if your team is like if everything about a project is just a slog and a grind, like
Mm.
that has repercussions that aren't realized on the balance sheet, right?
Yeah.
And like it kind of ties into like all of the things of like the intangible things of our industry, right? Like the relationships and the like the invisible burden and costs that are associated with like not respecting the boundaries and
Mhm.
not respecting like the industry
Yeah.
as a whole.
And that's what I want people to talk more about, honestly. So I'm glad that we're having the conversation because I feel like those invisible costs are just as important as line item things. It's just as important as AV. It's just as important as finding the right venue. It's just as important in accessibility and making sure the venue has certain guidelines in place for safety. I think that us as planners, we thrive for some weird reason on burnout and struggling and doing things that we know we shouldn't be doing as if it's some sort of badge of honor. I don't live in that world. I
Yeah.
want to live in the world where I enjoy events, I enjoy the relationships with my clients, and I enjoy the journey that we have. So those invisible costs have to be more spoken about because it needs to be something that clients are aware of. Because at the end of the day, if a client has a child that is sick, they're going to take care of that child regardless of what is happening with the event. If something else personal is happening, they're going to take care of that. And I don't understand why, because of the fact that we say this is an event, that we all of a sudden have to be these superhumans and get rid of all the other things that are happening in the world in our personal lives or with other clients that are counting on us for their events as well, to then just focus on this one event and go all out despite of what's happening outside of their particular event. We have to get used to, drawing those boundaries and being okay with explaining what those boundaries are to our clients.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. And I think perfect place to wrap. And I'll say, just because you can doesn't mean you should,
Yeah.
right?
Perfect icing on the cake. Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. It was great to have you on the
Yeah.
show. Like I said, love your content, love following you. Where can people find more about you, the services you offer, and follow?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You can find me at Andrew Roby Events. That's our website. Same thing for LinkedIn, Instagram. It's Andrew Roby Events. Just look that up and you'll find us. So thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.